The explosion from Chief Thompson's demolitions shook the entire mountainside, sending rocks and debris cascading down the slopes while silencing at least 4 Taliban fighting positions permanently. The blast created a brief moment of shocked silence across the battlefield before enemy fire resumed with increased desperation. Maria used those precious seconds to relocate to a new shooting position, knowing the Taliban fighters would concentrate their efforts on her previous location. From her new vantage point behind a different cluster of rocks, Maria could see the devastating effect of Thompson's explosive expertise. The eastern ridgeline where several enemy fighters had been positioned now showed a fresh rock slide and no signs of movement. The tactical balance was beginning to shift, but slowly, and the SEAL team remained outnumbered by at least 20-1 despite their recent successes. Lieutenant Commander Morrison coordinated his team's defensive fire while monitoring their ammunition situation. Each team member had started the mission with a combat load designed for reconnaissance operations, not sustained firefight against superior numbers. They were burning through ammunition at an unsustainable rate, with some team members already down to their last few magazines. Time and firepower were both working against them. Rodriguez continued monitoring communications while engaging enemy targets with his carbine. Taliban radio traffic had increased significantly after the explosion, with multiple voices reporting casualties and requesting reinforcements. The enemy was taking this engagement seriously, possibly recognizing they were fighting an elite American unit rather than a routine patrol. Additional enemy forces were definitely approaching their position. Through her rifle scope, Maria observed Taliban fighters attempting to reposition themselves to replace the casualties from Thompson's demolition work. She methodically engaged each visible target, her shooting rhythm now perfectly synchronized with the tactical demands of the situation. Each shot had to count, as missing would waste precious ammunition while allowing enemies to threaten her teammates. Her 5th confirmed kill came at 650 meters, eliminating a Taliban fighter who had been setting up a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. The RPG would have been devastating against the SEAL team's limited cover, potentially killing multiple team members with a single shot. Maria's intervention prevented that catastrophe while demonstrating the tactical value of precision marksmanship in close-quarters mountain combat. Hospital Corpsman Mitchell had stabilized Petty Officer Parks wound sufficiently for him to contribute defensive fire despite his injury. Every rifle was crucial now, as the Taliban fighters were beginning to coordinate more sophisticated attacks that required maximum defensive firepower. Park's position allowed him to cover approaches that other team members couldn't observe effectively. Chief Thompson returned from his demolition mission with intelligence about enemy dispositions and additional tactical opportunities. Several more Taliban positions could be eliminated using explosives, but reaching them would require crossing areas exposed to enemy observation and fire. The team needed to create diversions or suppressive fire to allow him to maneuver safely. Maria's 6th shot eliminated another enemy machine gunner whose weapon had been causing significant problems for the SEAL team's defensive efforts. The Taliban fighter had been using a PCAM machine gun from a position that dominated several approach routes, making movement extremely dangerous for the Americans. With that threat eliminated, the team's tactical mobility improved considerably. The weather conditions that had prevented air support were beginning to work in the SEAL team's favor as visibility decreased, and wind patterns made enemy shooting more difficult. Taliban fighters were less accurate at longer ranges, while Maria's training and equipment allowed her to maintain precision despite deteriorating conditions. Her technological and training advantages were becoming more significant as the engagement continued. Morrison made the tactical decision to begin a fighting withdrawal toward a more defensible position he had identified during their initial reconnaissance. The current location offered insufficient cover against the enemy's numerical advantage, but a rocky outcropping approximately 200 meters upslope could provide better protection while maintaining fields of fire. The movement would be dangerous, but staying in place guaranteed eventual defeat. Rodriguez established communications with a AC-130 gunship that was attempting to reach their location despite weather restrictions. The aircraft was still 15 minutes away and might not be able to operate effectively in current conditions, but any air support would dramatically change the tactical balance. The SEAL team needed to survive those 15 minutes while maintaining their position for accurate fire support. Maria provided covering fire as Morrison and Thompson moved toward the new defensive position, engaging multiple Taliban fighters who attempted to prevent the tactical redeployment. Her shooting had to be both rapid and accurate, suppressing enemy fire while avoiding friendly casualties during the dangerous movement. The complexity demanded absolute concentration despite physical and mental exhaustion from prolonged combat. The Taliban fighters recognized the American withdrawal and attempted to overwhelm the remaining positions before the SEAL team could establish better defenses. Enemy fire intensified dramatically as fighters advanced from multiple directions, requiring Maria to prioritize targets based on immediate threat levels rather than convenience. Her 7th and 8th shots eliminated 2 fighters who had approached within dangerous range of Mitchell's medical position. Chief Thompson reached the new defensive position and began improving its fighting characteristics while providing covering fire for the remaining team members. His position offered better protection and improved fields of fire, but the movement had exposed the team to additional risks during the transition. Several Taliban fighters had used the opportunity to advance closer to American positions. Rodriguez and Mitchell began their movement toward the new position while Maria and Thompson provided suppressive fire. The tactical coordination required perfect timing and communication, as any mistakes could result in friendly fire incidents or allow enemy fighters to overrun isolated positions. Each team member understood their role completely despite the chaos and stress of combat conditions. Maria's 9th shot eliminated a Taliban sniper who had been engaging her from approximately 800 meters on the western ridgeline. The enemy marksman had been using a rifle with telescopic sights, making him particularly dangerous to the SEAL team's precision-dependent tactics. Eliminating the threat removed a significant capability from enemy forces while demonstrating Maria's superior training and equipment. The movement to the new defensive position was completed successfully despite intense enemy fire and several close calls. The improved position offered better cover and more effective fields of fire, but Taliban fighters had used the transition period to advance closer to American positions. The tactical situation remained desperate, with enemy numbers still overwhelming despite recent successes. Lieutenant Commander Morrison assessed their improved tactical situation while monitoring ammunition levels and casualty status. They had successfully eliminated at least 9 confirmed enemy fighters while suffering only 1 serious casualty, but ammunition was becoming critically low. The AC-130 gunship remained their best hope for survival, assuming weather conditions would permit effective operations. Maria observed Taliban fighters attempting to coordinate another assault on the SEAL team's new position. Enemy movements suggested they were preparing for a coordinated attack from multiple directions designed to overwhelm American defenses through sheer numbers. Her precision shooting would be crucial for disrupting enemy coordination and preventing tactical synchronization. Rodriguez reported that the AC-130 was encountering severe weather difficulties and might not be able to provide effective fire support. Backup extraction plans were being developed, but ground-based quick reaction forces remained more than an hour away. The SEAL team would need to continue fighting against overwhelming odds without guaranteed support. Chief Thompson identified several enemy positions that could be eliminated using his remaining explosives, but reaching them would require exposing himself to concentrated enemy fire. The tactical value of eliminating those positions had to be weighed against the risk of losing his demolitions expertise and additional firepower. Every decision carried life-or-death consequences for the entire team. Maria's 10th confirmed kill eliminated what appeared to be another Taliban leader attempting to coordinate enemy movements from a position on the southern ridgeline. The elimination of enemy leadership was having a cumulative effect on Taliban tactical coordination, with fighters becoming less organized and effective as their command structure deteriorated under precision fire. The tactical situation was evolving rapidly as both sides adapted to changing conditions and available resources. The SEAL team had demonstrated superior training and equipment advantages, but Taliban numerical superiority remained overwhelming. Time continued working against the Americans as ammunition supplies dwindled and enemy reinforcements approached their position. Hospital Corpsman Mitchell reported that Petty Officer Park's condition was stable but required evacuation within the next few hours. Medical supplies were also running low, limiting options for treating additional casualties if the fighting continued. Every aspect of their tactical situation emphasized the need for resolution within a very limited time frame. Maria prepared for what might be the final phase of the engagement as Taliban fighters massed for what appeared to be a coordinated assault on the American position. Her ammunition was running low, but each shot would continue to be precisely aimed and carefully executed. The outcome of this battle would depend on maintaining the tactical advantages they had created through superior training and discipline. The first shots came from the ridgeline to their east, muzzle flashes winking like deadly stars in the growing daylight. Maria pressed herself deeper into her rocky position as bullets whined overhead and sparked off stones around her. The SEAL team had walked directly into a carefully planned ambush, with Taliban fighters positioned on three sides of their observation point. What should have been a routine reconnaissance mission had become a fight for survival against overwhelming odds. Lieutenant Commander Morrison's voice cut through the chaos on their tactical radio, calling for immediate air support while directing his team's response to the ambush. But the nearest attack aircraft were 30 minutes away, and helicopter gunships couldn't operate in the deteriorating weather conditions. The team was alone, outnumbered, and trapped in a killing zone that had been prepared specifically for them. Rodriguez worked frantically with his communications equipment, trying to establish contact with headquarters while incoming fire forced him to take cover behind increasingly inadequate protection. Enemy fighters had positioned themselves to create intersecting fields of fire that made movement nearly impossible. Every rock formation and natural shelter had been plotted and targeted, leaving the SEAL team with limited options for maneuver or escape. Maria studied the enemy positions through her rifle scope, identifying muzzle flashes and calculating ranges to potential targets. The Taliban fighters were well-disciplined, firing in controlled bursts rather than wasting ammunition on wild shooting. Their positions showed careful planning and professional military knowledge that suggested this wasn't a chance encounter, but a deliberate trap set specifically for coalition special operations forces. Chief Thompson crawled toward Morrison's position while machine gun bullets churned the ground around him. His explosive ordnance expertise might be crucial for clearing enemy positions or creating escape routes. But first they needed to survive the initial assault. The enemy fire was intensifying as more fighters joined the attack from previously hidden positions throughout the surrounding hills. Through her scope, Maria could see enemy fighters moving between positions on the eastern ridgeline, trying to flank the SEAL team's defensive position. She estimated at least 20 Taliban fighters were participating in the coordinated attack, with more possibly approaching from directions not yet visible. The mathematical reality was stark: 12 Americans against what appeared to be a full company of enemy forces on terrain that favored the defenders. Hospital Corpsman Mitchell had taken cover near a wounded team member who had been hit during the initial volley of enemy fire. Petty Officer Park was conscious, but bleeding from a leg wound that required immediate medical attention. Under these conditions, treating casualties while under direct enemy fire tested every aspect of her medical and combat training. Each movement exposed her to additional risk while trying to save her teammate's life. The compound that had been their original target now seemed like a secondary concern compared to immediate survival. Hassan might still be present in the building below, but capturing him had become impossible under current circumstances. The mission parameters had changed completely, shifting from offensive operations to defensive survival against superior enemy numbers. Maria identified her first target, a Taliban fighter positioned approximately 600 meters away on the eastern ridge. The man was using a rock outcropping for cover while directing fire at Chief Thompson's position. Through her scope's magnification, she could see his face clearly as he leaned out to aim his AK-47 at her teammates. She controlled her breathing, aligned her crosshairs carefully, and squeezed the trigger smoothly. The shot struck the Taliban fighter's center mass, spinning him away from his position and silencing his rifle immediately. One enemy down, but at least 29 more were still shooting at her team. Maria quickly identified her next target, while working the bolt on her rifle to chamber another round. Speed and accuracy were both essential now, as her teammates' lives depended on her ability to reduce the enemy's firepower advantage. Rodriguez finally established communications with headquarters, reporting their situation and requesting immediate support. The response was devastating. Weather conditions had grounded all aircraft in the region, and ground-based quick reaction forces were more than 2 hours away. The SEAL team would have to hold their position or break contact without external support, against odds that made either option extremely dangerous. Lieutenant Commander Morrison made the tactical assessment that would determine their survival chances. The current position offered minimal protection against the coordinated enemy attack, but movement across open terrain under direct fire would likely result in additional casualties. They needed to reduce enemy numbers significantly before attempting to withdraw, which meant Maria's precision shooting had become their primary weapon against the Taliban's numerical advantage. Enemy fire intensified as Taliban fighters recognized the threat posed by Maria's accurate shooting. Several fighters began concentrating their fire on her position, forcing her to move between rock formations while maintaining her ability to engage targets effectively. The incoming bullets struck close enough to shower her with rock fragments, but she continued working methodically through potential targets. Her second shot eliminated a Taliban machine gunner who had been directing devastating fire at Rodriguez's communications position. The heavy weapon fell silent, providing a brief respite that allowed Rodriguez to complete critical radio transmissions requesting emergency extraction. Maria's shooting was beginning to have a noticeable impact on enemy effectiveness, but she needed to work faster to prevent her teammates from being overrun. Chief Thompson identified an opportunity to use his demolitions expertise against enemy positions. Several Taliban fighters had taken cover behind rock formations that could be collapsed using properly placed explosives. However, reaching those positions would require crossing open ground under direct enemy observation and fire. The tactical risk was enormous, but the potential benefit could shift the engagement's momentum. Maria provided covering fire as Thompson moved toward his target position, engaging multiple enemy fighters who attempted to prevent his approach. Her shooting had to be both fast and accurate, suppressing enemy fire while avoiding hitting her teammate, who was maneuvering dangerously close to Taliban positions. The complexity of the tactical situation demanded split-second decisions that could mean life or death for everyone involved. Hospital Corpsman Mitchell completed initial treatment on Petty Officer Parks Wound, but his condition required evacuation to proper medical facilities within hours. The leg wound was serious enough to prevent him from moving effectively, which complicated any withdrawal plans the team might develop. They now had a seriously wounded teammate to protect while fighting against overwhelming odds in terrain that favored their enemies. The Taliban fighters demonstrated sophisticated tactical coordination, with some elements providing covering fire while others attempted to maneuver into flanking positions. Their movements suggested professional military training rather than the guerrilla tactics typically associated with insurgent forces. This level of organization indicated the ambush had been planned specifically for coalition special operations teams. Maria's third and fourth shots eliminated 2 more enemy fighters who had been advancing on Thompson's position. Her shooting rhythm was finding its pace, with each shot carefully aimed and precisely executed despite the chaos and stress of combat. Years of training were paying dividends as muscle memory and mental discipline overcame the natural human tendency toward panic under extreme stress. Morrison realized their tactical situation was becoming increasingly desperate. Enemy numbers seemed to be growing as additional Taliban fighters arrived to join the ambush. Weather conditions were preventing air support, ground reinforcements were hours away, and his team was running low on ammunition for a sustained firefight. They needed to break contact soon or risk being completely overrun. Rodriguez reported that headquarters was exploring options for emergency extraction, but helicopter operations remained impossible due to cloud cover and high winds. The team might be on their own for several more hours, which meant they needed to find a way to survive against odds that were becoming more overwhelming with each passing minute. The mathematics of combat were working against them in every possible way. Maria identified a Taliban fighter who appeared to be coordinating enemy movements from a position on the western ridgeline. Eliminating this apparent leader could disrupt enemy tactical coordination and provide her team with opportunities to improve their defensive position or begin withdrawal operations. The range was challenging at nearly 700 meters, but the target's importance justified the difficult shot. She adjusted her scope settings for the increased distance and crosswind that had developed as weather conditions continued deteriorating. The shot would require perfect technique and a degree of luck that accurate shooting sometimes demanded. Through her scope, she could see the enemy leader pointing toward different positions while apparently issuing orders to his fighters. The Taliban commander presented a clear target for exactly 3 seconds before taking cover behind a large boulder. Maria's shot struck him as he moved, the bullet impacting center mass and eliminating what appeared to be a key figure in the enemy's tactical coordination. Almost immediately, the intensity and organization of enemy fire began to decrease as subordinate fighters struggled to maintain their attack without leadership. Chief Thompson reached his target position and began placing demolition charges that could collapse the rock formation sheltering several enemy fighters. His actions were drawing concentrated fire from Taliban positions, but Maria's continued precision shooting was keeping enough enemies suppressed to allow him to complete his mission. The teamwork between sniper and demolitions expert was creating opportunities that neither could achieve alone. The tactical situation remained desperate, but small improvements were beginning to accumulate into meaningful advantages. Enemy leadership was disrupted, several key fighters had been eliminated, and Thompson's explosives were about to reduce enemy numbers further. However, time was working against the SEAL team as ammunition supplies dwindled and additional Taliban reinforcements continued arriving. The target compound appeared exactly as the intelligence photos had shown, but something felt wrong. Maria studied the structure through her scope from their concealed position on the opposite ridgeline, noting details that satellite imagery couldn't capture. The building seemed too quiet, too perfect, like a stage set waiting for actors to arrive. After 4 hours of careful movement through increasingly treacherous terrain, they had reached their observation point just as the first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky. Lieutenant Commander Morrison spread his team across the ridgeline in positions that provided overlapping fields of fire while maintaining concealment from the compound below. Maria established herself behind a cluster of rocks that offered excellent protection and a clear view of the target area. Her rifle rested on a small bipod, stable and ready for precise shooting if the situation demanded it. The distance to the compound measured exactly 847 meters according to her rangefinder, well within her effective engagement range. Through her scope, she could see no signs of life around the compound. No guards walked the perimeter, no smoke rose from cooking fires, no vehicles sat parked nearby. For a location supposedly housing a high-value Taliban commander, the place looked abandoned. Intelligence had suggested Hassan traveled with at least a dozen bodyguards and support personnel, but the compound appeared completely deserted. Rodriguez monitored communications frequencies while Chief Thompson scanned the surrounding area for signs of enemy movement. The radio intercepts that had led to this mission had been specific about Hassan's location and timing, but now those intercepts seemed questionable. Either their intelligence was wrong, or they were looking at an elaborate deception designed to lure coalition forces into a carefully prepared trap. Hospital Corpsman Mitchell positioned herself where she could provide medical support to any team member while maintaining observation of potential escape routes. Her medical training extended beyond treating wounds to include recognizing signs of ambush and tactical deception. The current situation displayed several indicators that concerned her, including the absence of normal civilian activity in an area that should have shown signs of daily life. Petty Officer Park used his surveillance equipment to photograph the compound and surrounding area, documenting details that might prove important during mission debriefing. His cameras captured images in multiple spectrums, revealing heat signatures and other indicators invisible to the naked eye. The thermal imaging showed the compound's buildings retained heat from the previous day, suggesting recent occupation, but no current heat sources indicated human presence. As the sun climbed higher, shadows shortened, and concealment became more challenging. The team's position offered excellent observation, but limited protection if enemy forces had spotted them during their approach. Mountain warfare favored defenders who knew the terrain, and Taliban fighters had years of experience using these same hills to ambush coalition patrols. Every minute they remained in position increased their risk of detection and retaliation. Morrison made the decision to proceed with the reconnaissance mission despite the suspicious circumstances. Intelligence had been reliable in the past, and Hassan's capture remained a high priority for regional security. The team would observe the compound for 2 more hours before deciding whether to call in additional support or abort the mission. Every option carried significant risks that could affect not just this operation, but future missions in the area. Maria adjusted her position slightly to maintain comfort while preserving shooting accuracy. Long-range precision shooting required absolute stability, which meant remaining motionless for extended periods despite cramped positions and physical discomfort. She had trained extensively for such situations, learning to control breathing, heart rate, and muscle tension while maintaining perfect sight alignment on potential targets. 30 minutes into their observation period, movement caught Maria's attention near the compound's eastern wall. A figure appeared briefly in a doorway before disappearing back inside the building. The person moved with the careful deliberation of someone aware of being watched, suggesting they knew about the SEAL team's presence. This first sign of life in the compound triggered a cascade of tactical decisions that would determine the mission's outcome. Rodriguez immediately reported the sighting to headquarters while scanning radio frequencies for increased enemy communications. If Taliban forces knew about the SEAL team's location, they would likely coordinate a response using handheld radios or cell phones. Any spike in communications activity could indicate approaching enemy reinforcements or preparation for an attack on the observation position. Chief Thompson began identifying potential withdrawal routes while watching for signs of enemy movement on the surrounding ridgelines. Taliban tactics often included allowing reconnaissance teams to establish positions before surrounding them with superior numbers. The current terrain offered limited escape options, with steep slopes and exposed areas that would be difficult to traverse under enemy fire. Lieutenant Commander Morrison faced a critical decision. The mission could proceed as planned with the assault team moving to capture Hassan, or they could withdraw immediately to avoid a potential ambush. Intelligence suggested Hassan was present, but the tactical situation had become increasingly dangerous. Radio communication with headquarters would provide additional guidance, but the final decision rested with the team leader on the ground. Maria continued observing the compound while the team prepared for either assault or withdrawal. Her role remained crucial regardless of the decision, as her accurate shooting might be needed to provide covering fire during either scenario. She identified several potential target areas where enemy fighters might position themselves, calculating ranges and wind effects that could influence shot placement. The figure appeared again, this time remaining visible long enough for positive identification. Through her scope, Maria could see facial features that matched photographs of Ahmad Hassan from their mission briefing. The high-value target was definitely present in the compound, validating the intelligence that had led to this operation. However, his visible presence could also indicate confidence in defensive preparations that made capture extremely dangerous. As Morrison prepared to radio headquarters with confirmation of the target's presence, Rodriguez detected increased radio traffic on frequencies commonly used by Taliban forces. The communications were coded, but their timing and frequency suggested coordination of military activities in the immediate area. Enemy forces were responding to something, possibly the SEAL team's presence or preparation for their own planned operations. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. What had begun as a straightforward reconnaissance and capture mission was evolving into something far more complex and dangerous. The team found themselves positioned between a confirmed high-value target and unknown enemy forces that might have prepared an ambush. Every decision from this point forward would have life or death consequences. Maria noticed additional movement around the compound as more figures appeared in doorways and windows. The building was definitely occupied by multiple individuals, confirming intelligence estimates of Hassan's security detail. However, The sudden increase in visible activity suggested they were preparing for something, possibly an attack on the SEAL team's position or evacuation from the compound. Through her scope, she observed one figure pointing toward their ridgeline position. Either their concealment had been compromised, or enemy scouts had detected their movement during the night approach. Taliban fighters were experienced at spotting coalition forces in mountainous terrain, using local knowledge and years of combat experience to identify threats that might escape less trained observers. Chief Thompson spotted movement on a distant ridgeline that could indicate enemy forces positioning themselves for an attack. The figures were too far away for positive identification, but their movements suggested military training rather than civilian activity. If Taliban reinforcements were arriving to support the compound's defense, the SEAL team could soon face overwhelming numbers in a location that favored the enemy. Morrison made the decision that would define the remainder of their mission. Rather than withdraw immediately, they would attempt to capture Hassan before enemy reinforcements could arrive. The window of opportunity was closing rapidly, but the intelligence value of the target justified the increased risk. Rodriguez transmitted their intentions to headquarters while the team prepared for immediate assault on the compound. Maria adjusted her rifle settings for the longer engagement ranges they were likely to encounter. Her role would shift from observation to active combat support, providing precision fire to eliminate threats and protect her teammates during their assault on the compound. The distance and terrain would challenge her shooting skills in ways that training exercises could never replicate. As the team prepared to move from their observation positions toward the compound, Maria took a final look through her scope at the surrounding terrain. The tactical situation was about to become significantly more complicated, with enemy forces potentially approaching from multiple directions while her team exposed themselves during the assault. Everything she had learned about mountain warfare and precision shooting was about to be tested under the most demanding conditions imaginable. The mission was no longer just about capturing Ahmad Hassan. It had become a race against time and superior enemy numbers, with survival depending on perfect execution of tactics and techniques they had practiced countless times, but never under circumstances this dangerous. Maria whispered a quick prayer and prepared to follow her teammates into whatever waited for them in the valley below. The helicopter blades cut through the thin mountain air like angry wasps, their rhythm the only sound breaking the pre-dawn silence over Afghanistan's Kunar province. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her gear one final time, checking her rifle with the methodical precision that had kept her alive through 3 combat deployments. The CH-47 Chinook carried 12 souls into the darkness, but Maria knew that not all of them might make it home. Team leader Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison studied the mission briefing on his tablet, the blue glow illuminating his weathered face. The intelligence was clear, but concerning. High-value target Ahmad Hassan, a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces, was reportedly hiding in a remote compound nestled between 2 ridgelines. The terrain was brutal, the enemy presence unknown, and extraction would be challenging. It was exactly the kind of mission that could go wrong in 100 different ways. Maria had earned her place on this elite team through years of proving herself in a world dominated by men. Growing up in East Los Angeles, she had learned to shoot with her grandfather, a Korean War veteran who taught her that precision wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about saving lives. Every shot had to count. Every decision had to be perfect. When she joined the military at 18, she carried those lessons with her, along with a determination that surprised even her instructors. The other team members respected her skills, though some had initially questioned whether a woman belonged on such dangerous missions. Petty Officer First Class Danny Rodriguez, the team's communications specialist, had been skeptical until he witnessed Maria's shooting during training exercises. She could put 3 rounds through the same hole at 500 yards in conditions that would challenge seasoned snipers. More importantly, she remained calm under pressure when others might panic. Chief Petty Officer Mike Thompson, the team's explosive ordnance specialist, checked his equipment while stealing glances at the mission map. The target compound sat in a valley surrounded by elevated positions that offered excellent overwatch opportunities for enemy fighters. If they were walking into a trap, those hills would become shooting galleries with the SEAL team as targets. He'd been on enough missions to know when something felt wrong, and this one had all the warning signs. As the Chinook approached the landing zone, the pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. The weather was changing rapidly, with cloud cover moving in from the west. Their window for air support would be limited if things went bad. The extraction helicopter would have difficulty navigating the mountains if visibility dropped further. Every variable was working against them, but the mission had to proceed. Maria felt the familiar pre-combat calm settling over her mind. She had developed rituals over the years that helped focus her thoughts and steady her nerves. She touched the small cross her grandmother had given her, whispered a brief prayer, and ran through her equipment checklist one more time. Her rifle was clean and ready, her ammunition properly sorted, her scope calibrated perfectly. Everything she could control was perfect. Everything else would depend on training, teamwork, and a little luck. The team consisted of specialists carefully chosen for their skills and experience. Besides Maria, Rodriguez, and Thompson, there was Hospital Corpsman Second Class Sarah Mitchell, whose medical expertise had saved lives on previous missions. Petty Officer Second Class Kevin Park handled intelligence gathering and surveillance. The others were seasoned operators who had worked together for months, building the trust and communication essential for special operations success. Lieutenant Commander Morrison gathered his team for final instructions as the helicopter began its descent. The plan was straightforward but dangerous. They would insert 2 kilometers from the target compound, move through the mountains during darkness, establish observation positions, and conduct reconnaissance to confirm the target's presence. If Hassan was there, they would call in additional support and execute the capture mission. If intelligence was wrong, they would withdraw without engaging. The compound itself was a traditional Afghan structure built into the hillside, with thick walls and limited access points. Intelligence suggested Hassan had chosen the location specifically because it was easily defended and difficult to attack. Previous attempts to capture him had failed because informants warned him of approaching coalition forces. This time, the mission was classified at the highest levels, with only a few people knowing the true objective. Maria understood her role perfectly. As the team's primary marksman, she would provide overwatch and long-range support. Her position would be crucial if the mission went bad and the team needed covering fire to escape. She had studied the terrain maps extensively, identifying possible sniper positions and escape routes. The surrounding ridgelines offered excellent fields of fire, but also exposed her to enemy observation. It was a calculated risk that came with the job. The helicopter touched down in a cloud of dust and debris, its rotors whipping the sparse vegetation into a frenzy. The team moved quickly into the darkness, their night vision goggles turning the alien landscape into a green-tinted maze of rocks and shadows. Within minutes, the Chinook was gone, leaving them alone in hostile territory with only their training and each other for protection. Moving through the mountains required careful navigation and constant vigilance. The terrain was treacherous, with loose rocks and hidden crevices that could injure team members or create noise that would alert enemy forces. Each step had to be deliberate and quiet. They moved in a tactical formation that allowed mutual support while minimizing their profile against the night sky. Maria took point initially, her experience in mountain warfare making her the best choice for navigation through the difficult terrain. She had spent countless hours studying topographical maps and satellite imagery, memorizing landmarks and potential hazards. Her route selection would determine whether they reached their objective undetected or walked into an ambush that could destroy the entire team. The intelligence briefing had mentioned possible enemy patrols in the area, but the exact numbers and locations remained unknown. Taliban fighters knew these mountains intimately, having fought coalition forces here for years. They used the terrain to their advantage, setting ambushes in choke points and escape routes that made pursuit nearly impossible. The SEAL team was entering their backyard, where every advantage belonged to the enemy. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew thinner and colder. Each team member carried approximately 60 pounds of equipment, including weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, communications gear, and survival equipment. The physical demands were enormous, requiring exceptional conditioning and mental toughness. Maria had trained for months to build the endurance necessary for such missions, running with weighted packs and practicing shooting techniques at altitude. 2 hours into the movement, they reached a checkpoint where Morrison called for a brief halt to check their position and assess the situation. The target compound was still several kilometers away, but they were making good progress despite the challenging terrain. Radio communication with headquarters confirmed that weather conditions were deteriorating as predicted, which could complicate extraction if they needed emergency support. The team's communications specialist, Rodriguez, monitored multiple radio frequencies for signs of enemy activity. Taliban fighters often used handheld radios to coordinate movements and share intelligence about coalition operations. Any increase in radio chatter could indicate that their presence had been detected. So far, the airwaves remained quiet, suggesting they had maintained the element of surprise. Maria studied the terrain ahead through her rifle scope, using its magnification to identify potential threats and plan their continued movement. The path to their objective wound through several narrow passages between rock formations that could easily hide enemy positions. Each potential ambush site had to be carefully observed and avoided or cleared before the team could proceed safely. Chief Thompson kept watch on their back trail, ensuring they weren't being followed by enemy scouts. Taliban tactics often included allowing small units to pass before attacking them from behind, cutting off escape routes, and creating deadly crossfire situations. His experience in counter-ambush techniques made him invaluable for protecting the team's withdrawal options if the mission went wrong. The mission timeline allowed for 6 hours of movement, reconnaissance, and possible target engagement before they had to begin withdrawal to the extraction point. Weather predictions suggested they had even less time before cloud cover made helicopter operations impossible. Every minute counted, and any delays could strand them in enemy territory without support or extraction options. As they prepared to resume movement toward the target compound, Maria felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Her shooting skills might be the difference between mission success and catastrophe. In the darkness ahead lay answers to questions that could save American lives or cost them everything they had worked to achieve. The mountains held their secrets tightly, and it would take everything she had learned to unlock them in the mountains of Afghanistan, where silence can mean the difference between life and death. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos pressed her eye to the scope. 30 Taliban fighters had her SEAL team surrounded in a valley that had become their tomb. The radio crackled with desperate voices, ammunition was running low, and shadows were closing in from all sides. But Maria had something the enemy didn't expect. Years of training had made her more than just another soldier. She had become death itself, precise and unstoppable. As bullets whistled past her position, she steadied her breathing and whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her. What happened next would be talked about in military circles for years to come. A single sniper, a woman who wasn't supposed to be there, would turn an impossible situation into a legend. This is the story of how one person's skill, courage, and refusal to give up saved an entire SEAL team and changed the course of a mission that should have ended in disaster. The mountains were about to witness something extraordinary.